All right, traders. In this video, what I'd like to do is teach you how to optimize strategies inside of the strategy desktop within the Tickblaze trading platform. Now, Tickblaze was designed for portfolio level backtesting, optimization, and live algorithmic trading. And as a follow-up to the previous videos on backtesting, the next step in the life cycle for algorithmic trading is optimizing the parameters for your strategies. Now, the key thing about Tickblaze is that we can start by optimizing one strategy at a time, and I can show you how to set the settings, how to set the increments, the step sizes, look at the iterations, and then process the test. But then I'm going to actually add on top of that by adding more than one strategy so that I can show you how to optimize a portfolio at the same time. Now, following the same infrastructure as the backtest, you'll see I've got 4 different strategies here. I have stocks, futures, Forex, and crypto. You'll notice that they're all different strategies. They're all EMA crossovers for this example, but they're all going to have different parameters because that's the job of optimization. We're going to optimize for the best settings for each of the markets and the stocks and the markets that we're trading, whether that's Forex, futures, crypto, or equities, right? Now, what's going to happen is you'll also see that we have different levels of watch lists in each of these strategies. I've got 24 symbols in the stock portfolio. I've got 1 futures market. I've got 7 Forex pairs, and I've got 2 crypto coins, right? And they're all on different time frames and bar types, which really makes this for a dynamic example, okay? Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that inside of the parameters, we're set to everything that we want. We always want to make sure that we're ultimately optimizing the correct strategy details. You can always change that on the fly as you wish. And the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be going into this button here. It says Edit Optimization Settings. Now, if I know that I'm only going to be optimizing the first strategy, I'm going to highlight it so that I know when I open up the strategy window here for optimization that I'm going to be pulling from this strategy, right? Whatever you do here in the Master Control Center must also be done inside the parameters window here, which we're going to go over, but just make sure that if you're looking at one strategy, that strategy is checked, or if you're looking at more than one, you check all of the appropriate strategies. Okay. Now what you're seeing here is the window for optimization. And you'll notice here that you can choose the optimization, whether you want it to be brute force or genetic. We're going to keep it to brute force, which is the default function. We're also going to look here and we can actually optimize for multiple different factors. Sometimes people want to optimize for net profit, which is a script, which you can see here. You can choose to find the best profit. If you want to look at profit factor, you can optimize for profit factor. You can set it to true or false. These are all scripts built into Tickblaze. And the goal here is you really get to optimize for whatever variable you're looking for. Maybe you're looking for Sharpe ratio. Maybe you're looking for win percentage. Maybe you're looking for the lowest drawdown. A lot of people will always look for net profit or for profit factor because that's very common in the backtesting realm. Now, the key here is this is what's going to display in the results window. So if you don't want to see something, you can either check it or uncheck it, right? If I want to see average days in the report, I can. If I want to look at slippage, I can. If I want to, maybe I don't want to look at the CAGR, right? Maybe I only want to look at the ending equity. I want to look at the maximum drawdown, right? I want to look at the net profit. I don't really care so much about the position count. And maybe I'm not really looking at Sharpe ratio, right? I only want to look at the factors that are here. Keep in mind, you will always see the optimization score. The term score is what we're looking for. We're optimizing for this performance metric. So when we get the report, you're going to see the score column, which is going to be the profit factor variable. Okay. Now, once you've determined all of the different settings that you want to see in the optimization report, then what you can do is you can come into the parameters window, and this is where the magic happens, okay? You're gonna notice that all of the strategies are here in tabs. If you only want to look at strategy number 0, then we're only going to look at strategy number 0, right? If I was looking at these strategies, I would need to have them checked up here. So I'm gonna make sure there's no other strategies selected because I'm not actually optimizing those strategies, right? I'm only looking at strategy 0. Because strategy 0 is selected up here. And you'll notice here that there's a few things I could optimize for. All of the variables inside of this window are actually what's inside the strategy script inside of the strategy. So what I'm going to do before I go any further, I'm going to go and I'm going to double click so you can verify that. When you go into the strategy parameters, these are all the scripts. So maybe you're a developer and you code your own strategy, or maybe you've purchased a strategy from somebody else and they have a whole lot of different variables in here. Whatever is in the strategy script is what you're able to be optimizing for, right? So in this example, you could optimize for the periods, you could optimize for the stop losses and take profit. You could also optimize for the position sizing, okay? So just something to keep in mind, that when you're optimizing, remember that whatever you see here is because those are the variables that are available in the strategy script. Okay, now for this example, I'm going to keep things quite simple. We're just going to optimize the indicator parameters. And I'm really only optimizing one strategy for this example. So what's nice is that I can kind of really take a look at the step count and the ultimate optimization variables for your incremental testing. And normally what this means is step is how many increments you're going to be testing by. The low to the high is the range in which you're going to test. So I'll give you an example, right? This first EMA, an exponential moving average, what this means is I'm going to start testing the 10 period, and then I'm going to go all the way up to the 30 period, but I'm going to go in increments of 10. So I'm going to test the 10, I'm going to test the 20, I'm going to test the 30, right? That would be what that means. If I went down and I choose 5 as the step, what this means is I'm going to basically test, maybe I want to test the 5 to the 30, which means I'm going to test the 5, the 10, the 15, the 20, the 25, and the 30. There's going to be more iterations. There's going to be more optimization runs. Maybe what we're going to do is we're going to drop this down to 5 here as well. And you'll notice that at any given time, when we change the step count or when we change the variable, maybe I want to come here to 35, you're going to see up in the optimization runs, this highlighted green section. When I hit enter, it's going to increase the optimization runs because I'm basically creating more variables and more iterations for it to test. And so as you increase your step number and you increase the low to high variable, this will either increase or decrease the optimization runs that perform. Now keep in mind, when you're doing this with one strategy, it's not going to be too much. But when you start doing this with 4, 5, 6, 10 strategies for a portfolio, you need to be cognizant of how many optimization runs you're actually putting into the system, because it's really going to determine whether you do a very short test or a very long optimization. And especially when you're doing that over multiple strategies or multiple markets, you can really put a workload onto the computer. But Tickblaze is built for blazing fast backtests and very fast optimizations. So depending on how many iterations you build, you should be fine with what you're building, okay? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just hit OK, and then I'm going to select my start and end date. Now, since I'm looking at a stock portfolio for this example, I'm really just gonna look at this, this entire window of testing. And since today is the 24th, I'm just gonna go up to today, and that's really just gonna be the entire year of this year, and I wanna see how well this portfolio performed. I also wanna see what is the best variables for my EMA crossovers to tell me what I should be looking at using for live trading. So I'm gonna hit start, okay? And it's basically going to start caching the data. Now look at the bottom. You're gonna see that it's going in percentages. It's going quite quickly. 36 iterations went very, very quickly, right? And now what you've been provided is a report, which is your optimization results, and it's going to highlight the score column. Now it's always going to put the best one at the top, and you can ultimately see the variables here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see this is net profit percentage. You'll notice that I had the ending equity, the max drawdown percentage, the net profit, and the net profit percentage. But really what we were optimizing for was the score, which was profit factor, and this was the best variable. So what it did was it told me that I had a 1.69 profit factor using the 30 crossing the 60 EMA. So what that told me is, out of all those iterations, I have the best results for the last year on the portfolio across 24 markets using the 30 and the 60 period. Now, what's really nice about Tickblaze is that I have the ability now to select backtest, and I can literally backtest that optimization run. Now, before we do that, I want to show you where you can actually see the 3D visual graphs if you're somebody that really likes to look at the heat map, or the actual point of graphs within the platform. Let me show you what a point chart looks like. You can see that you can move this around for visualization if you're a strategist or if you're somebody that looks at the data in those regards. You could look at a bar chart, right? You could look at a heat map. You could basically look at that. And it really just depends on what your goals are as a quant or as an algorithmic trader, right? A lot of traders will just look at the data. Some of you that are a little bit more technical will want to look at the visual graphs for risk analysis. Really, you have that flexibility inside of Tickblaze, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna run that back test. It's gonna populate, and it's gonna show you the entire breakdown, knowing you've got the best parameters selected for that strategy. And then I can come in here and I can take a look at the graphs, and I can just basically determine what the period breakdown was for this, right? If I wanna look at, day of week, what day of week did I make the most money? You can see Tuesday wasn't doing so good. If I wanna look at the breakdown of all the markets in the strategy portfolio, you'll see XLK took the most trades. You'll see that we had some pretty good, trade activity over Google, IWM, and Meta. Right, you can see ultimately we had a couple good trades on energy, ETFs, etc. But this is a really good breakdown of the symbols, right? And the goal here is to be able to assess the data. Optimization is about determining the best settings for your strategy, okay? Now, let's say you wanted to increase the iterations, right? Maybe you didn't want to just look at the 5 period increments. Maybe you wanted to increase that a little bit. Let's say you want to come in and you want to really kind of open up the window. Maybe I want to come into a 50 period, right? And then maybe I want to bring this to a 60 period and bring this all the way up to 150, right? We've really increased the iterations to like 190 iterations, right? And the goal of this is to really determine like what is the best variables for this portfolio, right? Like you normally want to start smaller, but then you can really expand by really breaking down the steps. If you're day trading and you're looking at smaller time frames, you'll most likely be doing increments of like 1 and 2, just depends on the charts that you're looking at, right? So for this example, I'm gonna make sure I got nothing else selected. I'm looking at this variable, hit okay. And I'm gonna do a new run. Now this is gonna take a little bit longer because my iterations have tripled by basically the step count and the period increase on the low to high variables. Let's hit start. And you're gonna notice down here it says 0, right? And now it's starting, it's got 1 iteration. It's slowly doing this, and it's gonna start creeping up a lot of speed. Look at how quickly it's gaining those iterations. You can already see it's cached the data. It's now loading the optimization runs, and it's actually going a lot faster than I thought, which is the best part about Tickblaze. It's really, really efficient with the optimizations, right? And so what this will do now is it'll give me a different report with a lot more information to look at. And look at that. Wow, did that ever change the variable? I went from a 1.5 or 1.6 profit factor to a 4 profit factor. Night and day. Like literally by increasing my iterations and looking at bigger variables, it truly changed the narrative for my strategy performance, okay? So I can see that using the 45 period, crossing the 140, gave me the best strategy performance. Now I can go in here once again and take a look at the graphs, right? To take a look at that. Look at that profit. Like that is beefy, right? Like that is very, very healthy from a return basis. Let's go in here and take a look at the back test now. And this is really what's fun because we can see how that really performed. And look at that equity curve, goes all the way. Now a little bit of a drawdown in here, right? And this is something that we want to be paying attention to when we assess the strategies, right? You want to look at what was your biggest drawdown, right? You had a max drawdown down here, right? And this is the key of looking at that from different viewpoints. But for the most part, you're going to see that we really did perform quite well in the strategy environments. And let's go back here and take a look at the summary for a second. You can see that the profit factor was extremely high, and that's what you want, right? You want to have high win percentage, you want to have high profit factor, you want to have a high net profit, right? And so that's exactly what we're looking to accomplish by using Tickblaze to optimize the strategies, okay? So we're going to reset the desktop, and we're going to go into the next detail, okay? So now we can see that we've already basically proven to find the best parameters, 45 to 140, okay? What we're gonna do now is we're gonna stack on another strategy, right? The goal is we're going to pick a different asset class. Maybe we want to look at stocks compared to cryptocurrency, right? So what we'll do is we'll select the cryptocurrency portfolio, right? And you'll notice that inside of the crypto strategy here, we're looking at what we have is 5 to 35 was what was pre-selected, but we don't know if that's the best parameters, right? How do we know what's the best settings based on historical testing? You'll also notice here, if I want to go in, I want to choose the size, I can choose how many coins. I want to make sure that I'm looking at, this is going to be on a weekly time frame, so it's really going to be based on an investment thesis. And let's go back over here and make sure I'm looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then I'm going to hit finish, okay? So now what I'm going to do is open up the parameters. And what's really key here is that I'm going to be looking at two strategies now. Strategy 0 up here, which is the first one. And then we're going to be looking at strategy 3, which is the second strategy for crypto. Now I'm going to turn these on because obviously I want to make sure they're both engaged up here in the main control center. And then I also want to optimize for the variables on the second strategy. Now you're going to notice that on the first one, we already determined what the best variables were for the strategy, right? I believe it was 45 was the answer on the EMA. And the way that Tickblaze is designed, you always have to make sure that you have a low to a high. If you put these to the same number, you're going to get an error in the script. So we're going to leave it at 50. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this to 140 and we're going to do 150. We'll leave it at that, right? And the reason for this is it'll be very little iterations on this strategy because we've already determined that. Maybe you want to increase it. Maybe you want to determine if you want to go up to 200 period to see if the 140 and 150 is a little bit more profitable with a bigger EMA, right? This is something you could do if you wanted to extend that. What we'll do now is you'll pay attention is that the optimization runs have drastically increased. And what that means is we're going to go over to the actual second strategy and we're going to take a look at the variables. Now you'll take a look, I've got increments of 20, right? And I'm going from low to high. Maybe you don't want to optimize such a big run. Maybe you just want to go from 10 to 20 period and you want to put this down to 0, right? You're optimizing it to 0 to 20. I don't think that'll work though, because you need to make sure you have at least one variable. So I would probably put it to 20 and then maybe go to the 40 period. That way you at least have one iteration. And then you could come up here and maybe you want to do the 140, right? The 140 period to the 200. Now you'll see I've got about 200 iterations. Now, as I mentioned, I'm just doing this as a demo to demonstrate both portfolios being optimized simultaneously. If you have the time or if you want to optimize more strategies and you want to bring the iterations up, nothing wrong with that. Just be mindful of how many runs you're going to be running on the software and how many strategies you're running in parallel. Now I've got two strategies, right? I've got the EMAs here configured for strategy 0, which is for stocks. I've got the next one here configured for crypto. We're now going to run these in parallel to see how well they compare to each other and to find the best variables for stocks and crypto, considering we're looking at different time frames, different asset classes, different variables. What I'll do is I'll make sure I'm optimizing for the right time period, which I am for this year, and let's hit the start button. Okay, now you'll pay attention to the bottom here. It's gonna do 208 iterations. You can start to see it climb. It's already starting to pick up speed. Remember, we're doing a little bit more iterations on this run, so just make sure that you're aware that it may take a little bit longer than the first test, but you can see it's climbing quite quickly. And that's one of the luxuries of Tickblaze, is that it's really built for speed. And I think you'll find that once you start using the technology. Now we're going to give it another half a second here or two. We're just going to let it finish. And then we're going to go into the data and assess the strategy parameters and see which EMAs came back the best. Interesting. Okay. So now that we've got two strategies here, you're going to see the score up here. You're going to see that it's got 4 numbers. Well, that's because these are the two variables. Strategy 0, you can see here, 45 and 140 came back pretty much the same as before. And then you're going to see strategy 3, crypto did best with the 20 period crossing the 140. Interesting, right? Now, you'll notice here that if I hit the optimization run, it's going to bring me to the back test. But you can also come in here, take a look at the graphs like I mentioned before. And you can see that the different strategies have different parameters, right? Like the different, when you're looking at portfolios, it's going to separate those portfolios from each other, which I think is actually just cutting edge. You're able to see the performance versus one versus the other. And to me, that's just innovative, right? I mean, it's very visual, it's very innovative. For those of you that know how to use those risk graphs, it can definitely be an asset. Now I'm gonna hit the back test, the optimization runs, which is actually gonna run 2 back tests on 2 strategies simultaneously using these variables. It's gonna pull those into the back test, okay? So let's run it. And now I'm getting a portfolio back test for 2 strategies using the best parameters, which is exactly why we're optimizing. And you can take a look, like it's giving me a great profit factor, 3.5, right? Got a pretty good win rate, 40%, which means my risk reward ratios are quite profitable. And let's go and take a look at the graphs. Remember, we're looking at 2 strategies simultaneously. Let's take a look at crypto, right? How did crypto? Crypto was kind of flat, right? Crypto didn't really go up and go up. It didn't really do much. It went up and then it went down and went back up. And where the real return was in the stock strategies, right? So if I look at the stocks, right, and you can take a look. Now, what's unique about Tickblaze, and this was done in the backtesting engine and video we did, is you can actually compare it. So if you wanted to truly compare Tickblaze with the other strategy, right, if you want to look at stocks, what I can do is I can take a look at crypto and I can take a look at the graph. And this is exactly why we can see side-by-side comparisons of the strategies. And this is the whole point of optimizing for the best performance, right? Clearly, crypto needs a little bit of work. Maybe we need to look at bigger sample size, different periodicity on the EMAs. Let's do that. Let's optimize crypto for a better run. That's the whole point of this video, is being able to look at the data and make sense of how to use it for an advantage point, right? So if we know that the stocks is doing quite well, right, we'll leave the stocks, we'll turn on the crypto, we'll edit the optimization parameters for crypto. We're gonna turn off the stocks, come back in here for crypto, and let's change the narrative, right? If I'm only at 8 iterations, let's see where crypto really has its strength. Let's drop this down to a smaller run, right? Let's see how well crypto does going from 5 to 50, okay? And let's bring this up here as well. Let's go 5 iterations, and let's bring this from 60 to 200. Right? Now that gives me 290 iterations. Let's drop this down to 150 and let's just see how well it does at 150. That brings me down to 190 iterations, which is quite comparable to before, and making sure I don't have anything else selected, and we're good to go. Now I'm going to run the same test with different optimization capabilities on only crypto to see if I can get it to closely resemble the strength of the stock portfolio. Let's go in here and take a look. Let's run that. You're going to see this be very quickly because we're only running it on 2 different markets at the same time. And we're looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it's got 190 iterations. Tickblaze will optimize this very quickly, and it's going to find the best parameters for those settings. And then our job is to see how well it compared against the stock strategy so that, you know, this is how you make actionable decisions to determine how you want to trade, right? And that's the power of this. Now take a look. We've got a 10 crossing an 85. Okay, so we know the best vector or the best score is 1.9 profit factor. Still not as good as the stocks, right? And you know, we can basically take a look at this and let's go and optimize it. Let's take a look at the optimization graphs as well, right? You can see it's pretty straightforward. Interesting enough. We'll take a look at the data and let's go in and take a look and let's run that up. Let's run that back test. Yeah. So let's take a look at the trade activity. Yeah, still pretty sideways, right? And you know, this is interesting because when you take a look at the stock portfolio, and this is something where optimization can really lend itself for this example video, is, you know, this is on a daily and we're on weeklies. And maybe the weekly is the issue. Maybe we need to switch the time frame down to the daily, and let's take a look at how well that does by switching the fractals. And this is how you go to optimize better performance in the strategy. Let's go into the data series. Let's bring this down to days. Let's go bring this up to days. And let's just change the narrative a bit, right? We're gonna drop the time frame down and we're gonna go back into the optimization parameters. We're gonna take a look and we're gonna run that against the daily and see how well the daily strategy time frame paired up against the weekly, and then see if it's even comparable to our stock portfolio, right? We'll keep the same iterations because I wanna compare it to a different time frame. Let's hit the start button. Oh, 1 second. Let me go in here and make sure that I've got it correct. Let's go double check. And strategy 0, 5 and 50, 60 and 150. Let's double check here. Make sure there's nothing equal. 45 and 50. 5 and 50. I have to select it here. That's the issue, right? See, there it is. You got to make sure it's selected here to make sure that you have a strategy to optimize, and let's run it. There it is. I'm going to reset this. Let's go back and double check it just to make sure. Let's turn it on. Make sure that my parameters are set, the right strategy. I just make sure nothing else is turned on. Whenever you get an error like that, it's because something's not checked. Good practice in the video for you to see that. It helps you troubleshoot when you're doing it yourself. And ultimately, if you take a look at the strategy, just make sure that there's nothing that's equal. Like you want to make sure there's a low to a high increment. And this should be good enough for us to run that. And let's backfill that data. There it is, yeah. So whenever you have something unchecked, you want to just make sure that you just go back through the steps, make sure you checked all the boxes, because let's face it, there's a lot to remember in this process, and that's why we have training and help and our team to help you guide through these tutorials. But really the goal here is to see the optimization of the daily performance on the crypto markets versus the weekly, and how well that pairs up against the stock portfolio, right? Amazing. Take a look at how we went from a 1.5 or a 1.8 profit factor up to a 4 profit factor. All we had to do was drop it down to a daily, which tells me that it's better to be investing on the daily time frame than it is on the weekly using this strategy, right? It's also telling me that it was a 45 crossing a 130, which is actually quite comparable to the stocks, which was 45 and 140 or 45 and 150, I believe, right? So let's run this and take a look at the performance for the daily. And you see, you got some drawdown here, right? You can see the drawdown. So that'll be interesting to actually see where that drawdown is. I'm gonna run that back test and we're gonna take a look at it. I wanna actually see where that drawdown came from inside of the graphs, right? Take a look, pushed up. And then it's been in a steady drawdown ever since the equity high, and rightfully so. I mean, at the time of filming this video, crypto's been in a range since since the halving, and we're heading into the election. So it'll be interesting to see what happens post-election, right? But what we've done is we've now basically created the narrative of looking at how to optimize different strategies, either singular or in a portfolio infrastructure. We've used the ability to select the parameters from different strategies, right, from different parameters here. And the goal is for you to truly take the infrastructure here and basically build upon that, right? Build your strategies, create the variables, test one at a time, then start testing 2 or 3 at a time. Pay attention to the process, make sure that you've checked the boxes and you're really following the steps. And then really look at the data to determine which strategy needs to be changed, which indicator settings need to be changed, and so forth, right? So the goal is to get you to live trading, but first you back test, then you optimize to find the optimal performance metrics. And then once you're comfortable in an optimization, then you can run them in a live trading environment, right? So what I'd like to do now in the next video is we're gonna end this tutorial. We're gonna segue into a performance and KPI video for ultimately optimization. And that will give you a breakdown of how to study the optimization parameters in more details. Take care, traders, and enjoy the video.